Hi everyone, it's Nikki. Welcome to my new channel, Crime and Cosmetics. If you know me, you know I absolutely love makeup. I'm always finding myself watching true crime, murder mysteries, unsolved murders. Like, I am someone who loves true crime documentaries in general, and I love makeup. So why not like sit down, do my makeup, because every time I do my makeup, it's an absolute slay. In my opinion, sometimes it looks a little wonky getting it done, but bear with me, it's all about the end results. I wanted to start this channel. I see a lot of people doing it and I've been wanting to do it forever, and a lot of these other creators in the murder mystery and makeup community have really inspired me to sit down and film the freaking video, because I have everything I need. I have the camera, the lights, the setup. If you know me, you know I've tried the YouTube thing before. This is something new. I have high hopes, so without further ado, I think we should just dive into the case. This is my first murder mystery in makeup, so bear with me. You know, I kind of am anxious about it, but I'm also optimistic and very excited. I hope we grow a freaking large community together. So if you like the video, you know, obviously click the like button, click the subscribe button, join our community, leave some comments, tell me some cases I should look into. Today is a Canadian case, and this is a case all about Russell Williams. So yeah, from hero to villain, the Russell Williams case. Let's get into it. And if you guys would like to know any of the products that I'm using, I'm going to be listing all the products that I'm using in today's video in the description box down below, as well as any of the trials link that I watched on YouTube. I'm sure you can find more things on YouTube. But it's hard to find things about Russell's childhood, his upbringing and stuff, but it's presumed that he had a very regular life. So without further ado, let's jump into today's case and talk about Russell Williams. Period. Alright, so Russell Williams was born on March 7th, 1963 in, oh my god, if I botch certain things like throughout the video, like where they're from and stuff, like I'm so sorry. Russell Williams, born on March 7, 1963, and he was born in Bromsgrove, Worcestershire, England. Bromsgrove, Worcestershire, England. Shortly after he was born, he and his parents moved to Toronto, Ontario. So I couldn't find anything about his upbringing, but what I read and what I could find is that Russell had a very normal family. He didn't have any like traumatizing experiences as a child. Throughout this case, Russell, you will find out that Russell does have a fantasy, and one of his fantasies are dressing up in women's lingerie, taking photographs. So it's very unclear of his childhood and if he did these if he like acted on these fantasies as a child, but we can only presume like maybe he did, like maybe he's been suffering with these fantasies for a while, but we're gonna dive into that. So he moved to Toronto shortly after he was born, grew up, had a nice childhood and stuff, and then he attended the Toronto University, where he later on graduated, joined the Canadian Armed Forces, and became a colonel and a pilot. So he had an amazing like everything was normal. There's nothing to suspect him of having like any mental illnesses, or none that people could notice. So he hid these things pretty well. Like, he was very well respected from his colleagues, his friends and family. He was looked up to by many. He achieved many goals in the military. He started off small and ended up building his reputation up to being a colonel. Like, that's crazy. Like, there's no signs of him being abnormal to people. So today's case is literally pretty scary in my opinion, and I'll tell you my opinion in the end. But I think cases like these are kind of weird because it's someone who lived a completely normal life, who could be like literally anyone who has like these dark, sinister thoughts in their head. And that's what's kind of scary to me, because usually like these killers and like these murderers, and they have like a rough childhood, or they were sexually abused, or growing up like they were, you know, not loved properly, didn't have the right care, didn't have the right parents. So usually when it comes to like murders and stuff, there's always like a, you know, a buildup of things that might have caused them to commit the acts. But in this case, like, there was no signs of anything, and that's what's like so freaking scary to me. Anyways, this is gonna look so crazy, but just, I promise it's gonna look stunning when I'm done. So Russell, he went to Toronto, you know, he joined the Canadian Armed Forces. He was a pilot. Like, that's literally crazy. Like, he was a pilot. He obviously behind this mask, like, he was living a double life, and behind what everyone thought was like a very accomplished military man, he harbored some dark, sinister fantasies that eventually were brought into light. Also, don't mind the dog. That dog always be barking. So Russell had these dark fantasies that he eventually acted on, and I'll dive into those fantasies quickly. Russell had fantasies of, not even fantasies, like, it's cross-dressing, it's completely normal. People do it, but Russell, it eventually, like, he wanted more. Russell is someone who liked power, control. He is someone who would try on women's clothes and feel like powered, and he had some dark, sinister things, and we'll dive into. So Russell had some very wild fantasies, and, you know, like, I'm not judging anyone for this. Like, obviously these are okay things to do. Like, I know people who have done it in the past, but it's cross-dressing, and it's when a man will feel good putting on women's clothing, either if that's makeup, if that's wig, if that's high heels, if that's skirts. But in Russell's case, this is women's lingerie. And Russell would not only dress up in women's lingerie, he would go to the extent of dressing up in women's lingerie and taking almost like Polaroid pics in all of the lingerie he would dress up in. And eventually this led Russell into committing small, not even small, like, I wouldn't even say it was small. He would commit some small crimes, like after he would steal lingerie, eventually leading into some bigger crimes, like breaking into people's homes that he would stalk and watch, and sexually assaulting innocent women, breaking into their homes, stealing their lingerie, taking the lingerie back home, and photographing himself in the lingerie for his own pleasure. Which is, like, fine. Like, if you're gonna do that, cool. But, like, why go to the extent of literally, like, breaking into innocent people's homes and, like, stealing their lingerie? This is definitely a trust the process moment. I swear everything's gonna come together in the end. Just trust the process. I wouldn't even say, like, those are small acts of crime. Like, those are planned out crimes. You're breaking into someone's house, you're stealing their lingerie and stuff. You're stealing their lingerie, and then you're going home, taking pictures of it, and God knows what else you're doing. Like, when he'd break into these girls' homes, sometimes they wouldn't be there, sometimes they'd be sleeping, whatever the case is. But who knows what the hell else he was doing inside their house. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what? He got a sense of power from doing this gratification after he'd break into these people's homes, sexually assault them, steal. He felt like this sense of power and control, and he absolutely loved how it made him feel. And, you know, I can only imagine, like, how freaking creepy is that? But two, like, how long was he planning out these break-ins? Like, did he sit there for a week or a couple days and watch these people's schedules, these victims' schedules, and, like, plan out his attack? What was he doing? You know what I mean? Like, that's just, like, such a creepy. Those are unanswered. Like, how was he planning out these attacks? And you can find him confessing to everything online. Eventually, we'll get there. I'm skipping ahead, girl. So he would sit there and watch them break into these homes, and eventually, like, he wanted more. And sadly, he did get more, because he would commit his first murder. Like, girl, you can just go to freaking the thrift store and buy someone's used panties. You actually have to go to the extent of breaking into their home and steal their panties and stuff. And it's weird because, like, there was nothing else he would steal. And, like, sometimes the victim's panties and stuff weren't even noticed. Like, they were missing. And many of these victims, online, it was very clear that they didn't want to be involved in any articles, any interviews, nothing. So I couldn't find anything online about the victims other than the 2 victims that Russell murdered. It's just weird because they didn't know their lingerie was missing, obviously, until the police eventually went through Russell's home and found all of these pictures. And I'll go ahead and post some pics throughout the video. But it's just, like, shocking to them. Could you imagine, like, you going to the police officers and, like, telling them your story and who you think it is and what happened, and then them, like, slowly investigating it, like, slowly as in, like, a couple months go by, you know, linking him to all of these crimes and reports. But, like, imagine eventually, like, seeing your lingerie on a man in Polaroid pics and not even knowing that lingerie went missing. That's crazy. That's, ooh, heebie-jeebies. Russell is someone who wanted power, control. He got a sense of gratification from committing all of these crimes and sexually assaulting all of these innocent people, stealing from them, putting on their lingerie, breaking into their homes. Who else knows what he was doing? But he got, like, a sense of power. He was living a double life because he'd go to work, highly looked up to by many of his employers, his friends, even his family. This actually shocked the nation and the Canadian Armed Forces, and it actually made an impact on it, and they had major policy changes, higher security, and it literally shocked everyone. Friends, family, co-workers. You know, literally, like, his career. And that's what's, like, that's so shitty of him, honestly. Like, what? Like, what? Living a double life, because he'd go to work and be all normal, and then he'd go home and think about these wild fantasies, what he's gonna do next, even, like, going to the extent of acting on them, just not getting caught, until it eventually got messy with the murders. Control, domination, these all played a role in his crimes, and sadly, it ended up taking the lives of 2 innocent people. Sadly, in 2009, his double life was exposed, shocking many, many people. Russell was responsible for the death and abduction of 2 women. One of those women are Marie-France Como. I'm not good at pronouncing names, so I'm just going to refer to her as Marie-France. And this would be Russell's first victim. Marie-France was born on December 18th, 1971 in Bathurst, New Brunswick, Canada. I know I just botched New Brunswick. I'm literally Canadian too. Disappointment. The sad thing is Marie-France actually worked with Russell, and they were actually deployed together on military missions. And she was actually someone who really looked up to and respected Russell for his high achievements in the Canadian Armed Forces. Russell was a pilot, and they worked together many, many times. Even, like I said, being deployed together. Little did she know that Russell obviously had dark fantasies, and, you know, ultimately it would lead to Marie-France losing her life. Marie-France would be the first victim of Russell, sadly, and we're gonna dive into that right now. I'm just gonna, like, quickly do my eyeliner and then dive into it because I can't do my eyeliner and talk at the same time. I'm not that skilled. So it's led to believe that Russell would stalk his victims. He would wait for them to get home, wait for a convenient time for him to go on and break into their house, commit a hiatus crime, murdering Mary France, and sadly, she would end up dying. So, upon looking into this case, Mary France's death was not disclosed to the public, but we do know that Russell liked to sexually assault people and steal and stuff, so it's, the autopsy stuff wasn't released either, unfortunately, but it's unknown, but we can only assume that he murdered her and potentially sexually assaulted her. And I don't know, I couldn't find too much about the specific deets, but what I do know is that there was an anonymous call from neighbors for a hospitality check on Mary France, and when the police showed up to Mary France's home, they knocked on the door and there was no answer, but upon further investigation and looking into windows and doors, they seen signs of distress, so they ended up breaking and entering into her home and finding Mary France deceased. And sadly, that's all we know. We do know that there was evidence linking Russell towards her death, but sadly they were conducting an investigation that took months. The evidence included video surveillances, and mind you, there was already other reports of Russell Williams being in other small acts of crime like robberies, sexual assaults and stuff, so they already kind of had a case with this guy. They found boot prints, which eventually led to Russell being like the top suspect, as well as tire tracks, which we'll get into in the next victim. Sadly, months would go by, and there was an investigation building up towards Russell, and during these months, Russell would commit his second murder. Only this time, this murder was a little more like Russell, like we said, like Russell is someone who wants more, and he got gratification from Mary France, and who knows really the exhilarating feeling like that could have given him. But at the end of the day, like, he was craving more. He felt like he needed to do something bigger. And like, yeah, like Mary France, like that was big, you know what I mean? That's a big step from sexually assaulting people and stuff. Even that's fucking crazy. But like the fact that you have to murder someone and now you need more. So this leads us to our second victim, and this victim is Jessica Lloyd. Jessica Lloyd was born on August 27th, 1982 in Belleville, Ontario, Canada, making her Virgo. Jessica worked as a corporal in the Canadian Armed Forces the same time as her abduction, which is kind of weird because it feels like Russell is targeting people in his community, and it's known that all of these murders and stuff took place outside of where Russell worked in Ontario at the Canadian Force military base, so it was like relatively in like that area. Guys, by the way, this is gonna look crazy because I got this Wet n Wild foundation in soft ivory, but it's the only foundation I have right now because I'm kind of like saving and I don't have a lot of extra coins, but it's gonna be white. But we're gonna fix it, I swear. I promise it's gonna look good. So this is a trust the process. I'm gonna be giving James Charles. So Williams actually targeted Jessica. He knew of her and he thought like, hey, like Jessica's like a perfect victim. Let's do it. I feel like he knew too there was like being a case built up in front of him, so he's like, fuck it, like let's do it. Months go by from the first case. Police are still conducting evidence against Russell, and this leads to Jessica's murder, Jessica's death. Russell waited for Jessica to get home, kind of like waiting in his car outside her place. He had to have known where she lived. He had to like followed her home a few times. This is premeditated. So in my opinion, I feel like this is something he took like days to think about, maybe even weeks, like it's very unclear. But he waited outside her home, waited till it was dark, and sadly he would break into Jessica's house. He would torture her, sexually assault her, and then murder her. Now, it doesn't say like how she was tortured. It doesn't say how she was sexually assaulted, but he would murder her and he would go on and hide the body. Okay, so get this. He would hide the body like right near the murder location. So we're going to dive into that. He ends up torturing her, murdering her. Who knows for how long. She wasn't found for days, but immediately, like a day after, the family knew something was up, and upon like going to her house and stuff, they couldn't find like a whole lot of answers, so they contacted the police. Immediately there was a search out for Jessica, and I think maybe too because she was in the Canadian Armed Forces, like there's more priority. I don't know if that's true or not, but like maybe there's like more priority to open up an investigation, or maybe because the police kind of like had an idea like, hey, like this past military woman, Mary France, was murdered and stuff, and they kind of had like a case building up to lead to Russell. So I think like maybe that may have caused like family and friends to be a little more concerned about Jessica. I don't know, that's just my opinion. It's kind of like very unclear, some of the things that I was trying to look into. So sadly she would be tortured, murdered. This event took place on January 28th, 2010 is when Jessica was murdered by Russell, and it took 10 days for search and rescue units to locate Jessica's body. 10 days she was left outside and she was buried. She wasn't even buried, she was kind of just like there. It was not only the law enforcement and military searching for Jessica, it was friends, it was the community, it was family, and it still took 10 days for the body to be recovered. After the recovery, the police were able to collect fibers from clothes. They were able to, again, they found tire tracks near Jessica's home. So the police were able to pinpoint all of the evidence. They found tire tracks, video surveillance, witnesses. Oh my God. Witnesses, the past murder of his first murder, of Mary France, and they were able to pin down Russell to the murders. And you know, Jessica and Russell didn't live too far apart, and when I said they found Jessica's body, they found Jessica's body yards away from Russell's cottage in Ontario, close to, so like let's say like this is the military base in the middle here. Let's say Russell's home was here, Jessica's home was here, and Mary France's home was up here. So it was all kind of like miles within each other. But Jessica's body was found a couple yards away from Russell's cottage, which is like, this whole situation is shitty, but why wouldn't you take it like further away from you? Like, were you trying to get caught? Like, it was very messy, and it was, it's all like very messy. Like, it's just, he was almost like crying out for help trying to get caught, because he didn't care about any footprints. He didn't clean up anything. He committed the crime and tried to just dump it and like live his life. And I don't think he really felt bad. Like, when you watch his interviews, there's no signs of remorse or anything. It's kind of creepy, and we'll dive into my opinion on that in the end. So yeah, there's that. The specific details on how she was found was not disclosed to the public information, and I feel like a lot of that has to do with the privacy of their family and just like how sensitive the whole case is to everyone. It's very hard for people to deal with, and it's like, it's just crazy to think about. Honestly, like, it's sad, it's crazy. Your girl's on a budget, okay? I love this contour palette. Tulum Beach Cosmetics. Oh my God. Eventually, after the discovering of Jessica and it being very close to Russell Williams' cottage and home and property, and upon like the victims' statements and cases of the sexual assaults and break-ins from the past, the police were able to finally pin Russell to the murder of Jessica Lloyd and Mary France. And the police went and arrested Russell and brought him in for an interrogation. And this is the interrogation that you can actually find on YouTube. I'll link it in the description box. It's kind of hard to watch, but when he's brought in by the investigators, he admits to everything. He straight up, the investigator in the interview showed him all the evidence, pinpointing him, the boot print, everything, the tire tracks, the video surveillance, the victims' testimonies, and he ended up just admitting to it. And he's like, yeah, like, I did that, like, blah, blah, blah. And there is a lot of... Okay, so the police actually, you know, looked into his cottage before they brought him in and stuff. And even after, they found hundreds of Polaroid pics of him in lingerie. He had drawers full of bras and panties. As well, in the basement of his home, there's a pole with a bed in the basement. It was an unfinished basement. It was a bed and a pole, and it had blood splatters on the floor. And it is presumed that, unfortunately, this is where Jessica Lloyd was sexually assaulted and murdered and tortured. And it's unclear how long she was tortured for. You know, like, her body was found 10 days after she was missing, but who knows within those 10 days how long he was torturing her, how long he brought her body out to the specific area where she was found. It's kind of unclear, and there's kind of like some questions that aren't answered, sadly. Go on and watch the video yourself, and like, I like to think my intuition about people fucking spot on, and I like to like put myself in their shoes and try and like figure out like what happened, especially if it's an unclear case. Like, how did this play out? What's my 2 cents on this? Let me use my detective skills and just kind of like throw together my opinion. And like, it's very like, who knows how long this poor innocent woman was being taken advantage of. And there's not a whole lot of pics online, but obviously there is some pics, and I'm gonna go ahead and post them. Those Polaroid pics I was talking about. Just like so freaking weird. Like, okay, it's fine to have like a cross-dressing fantasy, but to literally like, I don't know, like murder someone, like, there's literally a community for cross-dressers. Like, I don't know, like, I feel like he should have, it's such, I don't know. So anyways, we'll dive into that in a second. Fast forwarding to his sentences and conviction. So in October 2010, Russell pleaded guilty to all charges against him. He received life in prison, 25 years without parole. So what that means is he will face 25 years in prison, and then after those 25 years, he will have a chance, is when the suspects could be given a chance or eligibility to be released from jail under circumstances or watched. First degree murder for 2 victims and multiple sexual assaults and stuff, like, I think that's life in prison regardless, no chance of parole. That's my opinion on that, like, period. Like, you murder 1 person, like, you're done, you're locked up, okay, bye. But sadly, like, in some cases that's not like that. In some cases, some serial killers are let off early. In some cases, they're not sentenced enough years in jail. In some countries, it's different, and different laws, different states, blah, blah, blah. He is life in prison, 25 years without parole. Because of Russell Williams, the Canadian Armed Forces, actually, they are more strict. They put in more laws, and they changed their protocol majorly because the Russell Williams case has shook the nation. It has shook the Canadian Armed Forces. It has shook family and friends. Co-workers were absolutely shocked and in disbelief when they found out that Russell Williams committed these horrible, horrific crimes, and I don't blame them. Let me just do my lips real quick. Because of Russell Williams, acts and crimes. It obviously shook the nation, shook everyone around him, including his co-workers, the Canadian Armed Forces, his friends and family. It's really horrible, honestly, and people like Russell Williams are scary, in my opinion, because like I said in the beginning, usually murderers and serial killers and people who commit these kind of crimes have horrible past childhoods or trauma or mental illnesses, depression that affects what they do in their life. And sadly, this is someone who just had dark fantasies and had a sense of power and control and took it way too far and took advantage of the people around him. For Jessica Lloyd, a little loving in memory. She was known to be loving by her family and friends. Friends highlighted Jessica's strength of character, her determination, and her ability to overcome challenges. Mary Frances' family and friends have spoken about Mary Frances' love and caring nature. They may have shared some memories, and they choose to shine light on all of the positives and all of the goals that she has achieved in her life, that she loved and absolutely cherished the people around her and her job. Just like Jessica Lloyd, she was an innocent woman who did not deserve anything that came her way. If you want to know more about this case, you can find interviews on YouTube. You can Google search some of the crime scene photos. I'm going to upload what I can on YouTube. I'm not too familiar with what I can and what I can't upload. Obviously, I want to respect those, the family and friends and the co-workers who are involved in any case that I do. Make sure you leave some comments on some more cases I should do in the future. I wanted to kind of do my first case kind of close to home. It's a Canadian case. It hasn't been done before on YouTube, so I wanted this to be like the first experience of mine, and I want you guys to enjoy it too. So leave some comments down below on some cases. Let me know your thoughts on today's case. Hit that like and subscribe button, girl, because crime and cosmetics, we going up. We're gonna do our big one, period. Thank you guys for joining me on today's episode of Crimes and Cosmetics. Just remember that beauty lies deep within the skin. Bye.